So, hello everybody. We are live again today with a very special guest, also from Munich, but he works for a company in Hamburg as a CPO and most recently also CEO at Omoko. And first of all, hi David, how are you doing?
Hi. Good.
Good. Perfect. So I think before we dive into and before everybody joins, because it usually takes a minute or two until everybody joined, I'm actually super interested in where you guys are currently watching from. So typically we have quite a few people from like Germany, Switzerland, Austria, but sometimes also a little further like India or the US. Although if we are going down to Silicon Valley, it's probably still a little early to join that stream. Anyways, yeah. Post us into the comments where you're from. Would be super interested where you are watching from, which company you work for. Maybe you already have spread questions that you want to already post for David and me to go through. And with that, I think we can start, right?
All right.
Sounds good. So let me tell you a couple of things about David. So I think I met David in person for the first time a couple of months back at a product tank here in Munich, but we spoke, I think, like months before already online. And what I really love about David is that he's all about sharing and that he is on a genuine mission to make product better, not only better products, but also for the people behind product, the product managers. And I was actually super impressed by that. And that's also the main reason why I'm super happy that he is here today. So we're going to talk a lot about anti-patterns today in product and how we might actually address those. So yeah, David, thank you so much for joining. Maybe you can also say a couple of words to yourself, maybe something I have missed in my introduction.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. So I've been in the product world for, 15 years now. Have been part of different companies, from startups, giant corporations, wearing different hats: software engineer, product manager, head of product, CPO, and whatever that is. But what I realized is no matter where you are, there are challenges. And it's funny because it doesn't matter the perspective from different companies, small ones, big ones, from different roles, the challenges are very similar. At some point in time, I just thought, I might be the stupid guy who likes everything here, and that's why I fall into these traps all the time. But then I moved to another company and I saw that So eventually I started sharing my learnings, and I realized I was not the only one with that. And that's what I have been doing in my free time. It's a kind of a hobby that became a passion. So initially I was just posting on Medium. Now I have my newsletter, Untrapping product teams. But the idea is, as you said, to make the product road better. So I want to equip people for the challenge ahead of you, because you cannot avoid the challenge. They're just standing in your way, and you need to face them heads up. And sometimes you're going to hit the wall. And the question is not like, how can I avoid that? Is what can I learn from that? How can I do differently? So that's what I'm trying to do. And recently, as you said, I took a different role to me. It's a big shoes. So let's say I raised to the level of my incompetence. And the reason I decided to accept this is because I said, now I have the chance of creating the environment where all the great ideas can flourish. So now I cannot complain anymore about the sea level. I need to do what I think it should be done. It's hard, it's very hard, but I have a lot of fun with that and continue sharing my learnings and being active in the product community. So that's what I do. I share, I help. Sometimes I provoke, because I learned, I come from Brazil. So when I was a kid, people would always tell me, you cannot stand on the wall, because if you stand on the wall, both sides will throw stones on you. So I always pick one side. So there are some things that cause some discomfort, some frameworks. I have strong opinions, and I share them because this creates learning.
Sounds amazing. I love what you said about, okay, now that I actually took the role of the CEO, I can't complain no more about sea level. Yeah, super interesting. I can imagine that this is like quite a big step, and also a lot of responsibility, but I'm sure that you will manage very well.
Doing the best I can, a lot of learnings, but it's been fun. It's challenge, as I said, because now wearing this hat, I see how easy it is to create a timeline and ask the teams to just go with that. There's a lot of pressure from investors, from customers, and it's very easy to make a promise on behalf of the others, and recognizing that I am the worst person to make this promise is hard, because I still have the hands-on in my head, product manager. But now my role is not to create the product, it's to create the space. It's different.
Yeah. How do they say it? You can't judge a woman or man if you haven't walked a mile in their shoes, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And talking
So
about anti-patterns and so on, maybe we could go and start learning. So I shared here. Oh, I have one link, prepared a Mentimeter, that I want to hear from the audience.
I will
What?
share it. Meter. See if this works.
Good. So as people start feeling that, I'm sharing the screen already. Then I think Sebastian can put it here.
Yes.
Good. So this is something I like doing in different moments. It's a simple question. How often do you experience the following? Output over outcome and the others here. Maybe you never experience that. Maybe you always experience that. Almost always, so to say. And when do I do that? I consulted many companies, and whenever I start consulting, I like doing this exercise with different levels of the organization. And the reason is to understand what is happening there. And then I can find opportunities. It's not to say that the guys are totally screwed up, because I don't recognize any, I don't know any company that does product perfect, but many companies that are willing to change something. And if you look at what we have here, there are already some answers coming in. We have output over outcome. What is the meaning of that? In short, feature factories. More features means success. what would be something you start seeing within this scenario? Probably there is a strong point about velocity. So teams pay very close attention to velocity. I did that already when I started my role of product manager. I even got promoted because I managed to accelerate velocity in the team. So the team used to deliver 30 story points on average, and then the team started delivering 37, more than 20% increase in velocity. I got promoted. So this is output over outcome. Why is that a problem? Because actually output is a means to an end and it's not the end itself. What matters is what the feature creates. What is the impact? And if you don't measure the impact, then you have, in the end of the day, a very cluttered product that maybe it confused the user instead of helping them get the job done.
I can still remember that. Also, like I think my first role as a product manager, I paid way too much attention to velocity, way too much, and it was always about like predicting when something is done, like in terms of output, obviously, not in terms of outcome, right? Because we, to be honest, we didn't measure that much back then. So I mean, we measured something, but we didn't measure the right things. I mean, we measured like to the button click, basically, but we didn't really think about like the metrics that actually mattered. So I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
That's true. And it's very hard because companies are not bad. They may have not seen another way of working. And in my position as a product manager, when I started, that was how the company worked in a very traditional way. There are roadmaps and so on, and you follow that. But I didn't have the skills to challenge this. So I followed, and I thought I was right. And do you know how I realized I wasn't right? When I got approached by Booking.com and they said, "Oh, you have 40, I think it was around 3 years of experience as a product manager, and we are hiring, so we would like to have you in an interview." And then I had the interview with HR and so on. It went quite well. And then I had a technical interview. Ooh, that was embarrassing. I couldn't answer half of the questions. And then I said, "Oh my God, I'm a fake product manager." And I said, "I need to change that." And they realized I wouldn't be able to change where I was. So I said, "I'm going to move from this organization to a startup because then I will be forced to learn." Of course, a startup. I didn't apply, but I got requests from many companies back then because it was quite a fancy name, product manager in Brazil back then. So you just put that on LinkedIn, recruiters would hunt you. It didn't matter. It was a job title. Then startups approached me, but they said, "Yeah, but you don't know this." I said, "But I want to learn," and so on. And I said, "You know what? Let's have a cut in my salary. And then I join here. There's a risk, there's probation period, and I take the risk." So then I joined the startup with a cut in my salary, and then I started learning different ways. But I had to do that. So that was one thing that happened with me. But now we look at the second one, opinions over evidence. And I see here a big number. So what is the meaning of that? The meaning is the following. Someone says, "I think this is the best thing to do." And then we start doing. And no one is looking at which evidence do you have it? How confident are you that this is the right thing for the users? And what I see commonly happening is quite weird. It's not only with the stakeholders, it's also inside the team. There is the famous outside the team, the hippo, the highest paid person opinion that can drive decision because no one wants to challenge the hippo. And if you challenge the hippo won't listen to you. This is one aspect without evidence. But inside the team, I see the following. Maybe the UX designer did the research, interviewed customers, and come up with something. And then the product manager tried to cut the corners to ensure it fits the size. And then the software engineers start cutting the corner. But then it start doing what they think it's the best for the product. And no one is looking what is best actually for the user. Because the very important point is the following. If you do something that is rational, users won't understand how to use it. You need to make something that is natural for them. So that is why evidence is highly important. And we go too fast to share our opinion. We go generally. I used to do that quite often. because I was told, you don't bring me problems, you bring solution. So whenever I would hear something, I would be thinking on the solution immediately. And that led to many useless solutions in my life. So now I think, yes, bring problems. Being identify customer pains, needs, and wishes that are worth solving. And from evidence, like how do customers care about them? How often does that happen? And how many customers would be impacted? And how could we solve that? This would be better than saying, I think this is good to do. And opinions will just mislead you, I would say. And now we talk about the biggest one, but I think Sebastian has something to say about it.
No, I have to. I had to smile. Just I'm so. I know. I know that. Like I heard you talk about like how user testing is basically confirmation bias,
Yeah.
but I have still like maybe a tiny story to share regarding opinions over evidence. So also years back we did like a user test, but we just wanted to try, like it was really usability testing, and we really wanted to try whether the element would work in A or B, like in a better way. And so 90% of the users had no problems with A. The other way around was true for B. They had like a shitload of problems with it, right? So we exit the user test. I talked to the other person that was actually with me in the test, and I said, yeah, then it's clear what we do, right? And they were like, yeah, B. And I was like, what? Wait a second. I mean, we clearly saw that A was better. And then they said, yeah, but I like B better.
Yeah, that's I know this playing pretty well, and it's very connected also with roadmaps. So in roadmaps, what happened is as you see here, there's the big one, prescriptive roadmaps over embracing the unknown. So what is the thing here? Someone maybe outside the team, maybe the C-level. Now I cannot complain about the C-level, but I need to ensure that I'm not going to make the same mistake. Defines who does what by when. The challenge here is that the who is not involved in this conversation. So you define who does what by when, but you only throw the roadmap over the fence and say, hey, have fun. Here is the roadmap for Q3. And don't dare you not delivering. So it goes with this. And what is the problem with that? Because the truth is, it's a bit a weird sentence, but we don't know what we don't know. And that is a challenge. And that's why it's more important to embrace the unknown. You should know where you want to land, like the outcome you want to achieve, and then you figure that out. I like one sentence from Martin Dauman. He has just written a book about sprint goals. But the sentence he has is about Scrum. And he defines Scrum in one sentence, which is using what we know to discover what we don't. And why is that so important? Because if we spend a lot of time with a prescriptive roadmap, we will be going to the future very far from us, and we may not have enough evidence. And then we craft a plan, and then we are going to craft a perfect plan. And then what happens? Connecting to the story Sebastian said, we will start doing a design, and then the design will be beautiful. And then once the color is in the right tonality of blue, and then you have the buttons rounded enough so management can approve and all stakeholders love, then you can do user testing. Then you do user testing to prove your solution is right. Maybe you change a little bit the copy, you realign the buttons or something, but it's very unlikely you would be willing to change the solution because there's a lot of pressure to deliver on that prescriptive roadmap. And maybe you don't even have the energy to challenge that because you're already receiving a lot of pressure. But the truth is, we don't know that. We don't know what makes most sense. So that is the importance of setting a goal and then say, what are the assumptions we have behind it? Let's test them. And see, I'm saying the word test because you need to go with a learning mindset, and some assumptions will actually go wrong. You won't validate them. You prove them wrong, and that's fine. Then you learn and you adapt. And this is one of the biggest challenges I see, and I call as being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because as humans, we don't really like the unknown. We don't like stepping where we don't know. We get a bit panicked because it's dangerous for us. What's going to happen if I step into the unknown? And I would say it is more dangerous creating a solution that solves nobody's problem. Even worse, it causes problems you didn't have. So that is why prescriptive roadmaps won't help you. It's better to have outcome-driven roadmaps.
So, Anna, I know I just wanted to ask something towards like the solution, but maybe we talk about that a little later.
We can talk once we share the ingredients. What do
Yes.
people use it?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And what about the deadlines? So deadlines are tricky because most of them are arbitrary. There are indeed hard deadlines. Maybe you have a conference and then you want to launch your product and this conference. Yes, that's a deadline. So you need to do something like that. And then it goes to achieving goals. What is the difference here? When you start setting deadline, you assume you know already. There is the only good thing about the deadline is setting the constraints so that teams make decisions to fit that. But the problem is when the deadline is set outside the team and they don't even know the goal behind it. If the goal is just to deliver something for the sake of delivering, there's no commitment because the team then just have to deliver it. And the challenge I see here is assuming we can get something done by a specific date. And this is about relying too much on estimation. In general, we are very bad at estimating because software is complex. It means it's unpredictable, some things that's going to happen. And I like trying to compare with the weather forecast. In the morning was telling me actually that by now should be raining quite a lot here in Munich. And when I look here, it is sunny. And do you know why that happens? Because more information got available and then it changed the weather forecast. And nobody complains about that. But with software, it seems like if you get more information and you want to change the forecast, it's bad. No, you cannot because, well, you are stupid. You did a bad estimate. It's so funny because it makes no sense, actually, this. Estimate, by definition, is inaccurate. So it's just an estimate. And as we acquire more information, it should be fine to change that. But when you have the goal, it's more important to set the context. What do you want to achieve and in which context? Then you can make decisions towards that. Instead of getting in a conversation, what are we going to cut to meet the deadline? This isn't helpful. But talking about what should we focus on right now to achieve the goal we have, it's better.
So what would you say is the difference between like the conversation when you say, all right, so deadline is fixed, we cut scope, like opposed to what you just mentioned about like focus, because isn't cutting scope also like focusing on less things?
But that's a good thing. But generally, the deadline comes with a huge scope predefined. And the scope is generally the output. And then we start talking about which output are we going to cut within the assumption that the output is correct, instead of looking at the goal and asking, how does this contribute to the goal actually?
So essentially what you're saying is you should be more about prioritizing the goal than essentially going through the backlog and cut like the bottom half to meet the deadline.
Exactly. So, and if you look at this, the word I used was over. So meeting deadlines over achieving goals. So it is inverted. And I didn't use instead of, because you need still the deadline, but you need to put the goal first. The goal is more important.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the last one, as I can see here, also you see more of this implementing solutions over solving problems. As I said, it's common to have this situation where People don't want to hear about the problems, they want solution. But this, I always make the comparison as going to the doctor. Imagine you are feeling bad, and then you go to the doctor, and in front of the doctor, you look to the doctor, what's up? And then you say, I came here today because I want you to operate my stomach. So can you start the surgery right now? What is it? What's wrong with that? Because you are the patient, and then you are giving the solution. So you are on the solution space instead of the problem space. What the doctor will do will help you walk back and then explain about the problem space. The doctor will say, what's going on? So tell me, what are you having? And then you say, I have a stomachache. The doctor will say, did you change your behavior over the last days? Oh, not really. But yesterday I ate some chicken curry, ultra spicy. That was the only thing that changed. The doctor will say, okay, just go home and relax. So the doctor is the one who defines the solution, but needs to know the problem. And funny enough, in the product space, the product team would be the doctor. So you should define the solution. And stakeholders and customers would be the patient. But what happens is, like, the patients nowadays are so tech savvy that they define all the solutions without telling the problems. But there are some things you need to be aware of. When you try gathering requirements from business stakeholders, then wants from stakeholders are not always aligned with the needs from end users. And that is a challenge. So you need to separate these things and ensure that you understand the problems you are trying to solve. Because otherwise, you create a solution that solves no problem. And that's frustrating, because I've been in this situation more often than I would like to.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I was taught very early, I had good mentors, luckily, in my product journey, was always ask why, and don't only ask it one time, ask it like 3 or 4 times until you get to the bottom of it. Because I mean, obviously, I mean, people just like love to think about solutions and not about problems, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's actually very common.
But the why has a tricky aspect. I love asking why, but I rephrase how I ask, because the challenge is the following. Why puts people in defensive mode? You ask,
Yeah,
why do you think that? And the person will automatically think, why is he asking that? Is my thought incorrectly? But if you say, how did you come to this? Then they show more curiosity, but it's the same question.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I also usually don't ask why, because yeah, I experience the same. People get like in defensive mode by some. So I most often I think as I say that is interesting. Help me to understand how you came to that solution, and then you kind of dive into and then that's interesting. So why do you think that is? And then you kind of drill it down and go level by level by level until you really reach a level where the need is obvious or the problem,
Yes.
and you expose it. And that's that's very true.
Yeah, it's reformulating with what and how. That helps getting to the information you need. That's
Yeah.
cool. And you were talking about solution. I think now we can share the second link
Yes,
and
we can. Let
explore
me
the
just
ingredients.
quickly, exactly. Let me
I
just
will.
quickly send the second link. So maybe we can give everybody. Oh, that I wanted to. I will try to do it again. Join the Mentimeter. So maybe in the meantime, while everybody is filling out the product team health check, because I think that takes a little longer than the other one. One thing. So on the 13th of, the date is actually wrong. That's not good. Let's try that again. So on the 13th of October, which is a Friday, Friday the 13th, hopefully nothing bad will happen. We're actually hosting the Just Product Conference here in Munich, which you can check out at justproduct.de. And if you subscribe to, oh, great, comments come in. Subscribe to David's newsletter, you can actually get a voucher for it, which is 15% off. So, David, tell us how people can subscribe to your newsletter.
Sure. I will send a link also. You can find on LinkedIn. It's directly there on my homepage, but I can give you the link. It's called Untrapping Product Teams, and it is available on Substack. And if you search there, you find it. And soon I will just post there how you get the voucher, and then you can benefit from this.
Yes, so we are really looking forward to that. By the way, if you can't join in person in Munich, it's also free to stream. And we already have two great people from the product space joining us, Marty Kagan and Ash Murray. And we are still looking for other speakers just to enrich the lineup and make it worth everybody's while. And also, if you're in Munich, I mean, this is going to be like a great get together for the whole Munich product community. So yeah, looking forward to that.
That's cool. It will be a great event for sure. I'm not going to miss. I will be part of that.
Oh, that shrunk together quite fast.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised. But let's talk about this. Is the other exercise I do. So first I do the exercise understanding the status quo, and then I do the product team health check. And this health check to me is something. There are two folds on this. First is to understand reality. I always try picturing cooking. I'm not a good cooker, but I love food. So I was talking to Sebastian before the session started that I have a stomach-driven decision framework. So sometimes I make analogies with cooking. And a good chef, for example, will have better chance of making a great meal once the right ingredients are available, because then you are going to do it correctly. And if you look at product management, you have better chance of succeeding once the right ingredients are available to you. But also, a great chef will look at what is available there and will do the best possible, and can be even something outstanding. So that's what the attitude. The attitude is to use what you have to make the best result possible. And then eventually you can get the others that are missing. So I don't want to make you feel powerless with this exercise. On the contrary, I want to show opportunities where you can act. For example, when I see these numbers here, the idea of the product team health check is to see like how often do you use this, what do you have available, and how do you use. Because even if you have a product vision but it's hidden somewhere that you don't use during your planning, during your review, during your quarterly planning or something like this, that's not useful. And the product strategy should be something that enable you to make decisions. You know the audience you're trying to serve, and you know also what you're trying to achieve and what not. You know, for example, at this point in time, it matters more growth, even if that increase acquisition costs, but you are not really focusing on recurrency. You're focusing on growing your customer base. And that's the direction, and it is fine. And you know where you're trying to grow, for example. You are trying to grow maybe inside your country. It is not an international expansion. So it sets the tonality of strategy. And then you go to the others. But if you look at this, generally it's a question people ask me. All right, so where do I start? Should I go from top to bottom? Should I go from product vision to strategy, go and so on and da-na-na? I'd say no. And there's one reason for that. Because if you see some numbers like this, it will be very hard to get alignment and set one product vision. Because in this scenario, I would imagine there is a lot of features happening at the same time, which they may not relate to a common goal. They may not relate to a product vision. And that's okay. It's the status quo. How do you make the best out of it? You need to start showing what that will lead to. If you continue doing this, what that will lead to. And I say the most actionable one is not the product vision, it is the assumption. Why? Because that you can do on your own. Within your team, you can say, what are the assumptions behind this feature? What are we assuming? I can tell you there would be some on desirability. You assume that people want that. That's the very first one. There's something on the usability. You assume that people will understand and can use that. So these are things you can start naming in more detail and say, all right, so these are the assumptions. What about testing the most critical ones? The ones that if they are proven false, your feature becomes useless. And then you test them. So you name, you test, and what do? You share the results with the ones who make the prioritization and say, here's what we learned. We built this feature. The evidence is telling us that. Do you want us to fail? And then they will say, ooh, all right, so you this is the evidence, so it means makes no sense. So what could we do differently? And then you start winning new cards. Then you say, all right, maybe we can go to outcome. Let's try something different. Let's understand what we're trying to achieve, what matters most. So starting from the assumption can be a good point, and that can help you start shaping the product in the product management aspects in a way that you get to the elements you need. And then eventually you can go to product goal, product strategy, product vision, and so on. But the point is, pick one of these items here and say, what can we do differently right now? How can we act?
Is there anything like, obviously, naming assumptions is not necessarily the easy part, to be honest, but like it's the first step you might be going. When we talk about testing assumptions, is there anything teams would need to have in place in terms of measuring, analytics, research, like anything you would recommend if you don't have that in place yet?
That would be for sure very helpful to have, for example, the analytics in place. You can look at data. If you have also the infrastructure supporting splitting tests like A/B tests, for example. But it might be you don't have any of them. Then what do? Then I would say you run classic experiments. Prototype. You do something and you present to users, talk to them, and see the result. You named the assumption before, and you're right, naming the assumptions can be hard. A way to simplify that is there are two things I like doing. One is I say, we put this feature live, and the result is a disaster. What made that? So what went wrong? And then you start naming everything that went potentially wrong. And then you say, aha, these are the assumptions we have. So we are assuming people you use. It's a disaster, nobody used. It's a disaster, nobody signed up. It's a disaster, this happened. And then you can test and see what happens. And the other way is using a kind of a customer journey. So you name the journey of the feature and you say, what do we assume it happened in each step of the using of this feature? And then you can test the most critical assumptions. Very important. You don't need to test all of them, because if you try testing all of them, it will take all of your life. So you test the ones that once they are proven false, your idea will be useless, and also that you lack evidence. That means you don't know if that's true or not. And about the equipment, ideally you have already analytics, you look at the data and you can get answers to some of your questions directly, and you can run A/B tests. But life is not that simple. It might be that you lack this, and I would still say, don't be powerless. Think what's the best move you can do with the cards you have.
Yeah, completely agreed. Maybe one side note from my side. So I know that in the English language, saying assumption is the way to go. What I actually experienced a lot with German companies, that when you talk about Annahmen, so the German word for assumptions, people don't really get it. like what they're supposed to do. So what we tend to do, and I think I read something of you that you don't like that word, but we actually like to talk about risks or risiko, because then people get it, right? So then it's just like, yeah, what can break things, like, because I think people are very very used to, at least in classical setups, to think about risks.
Mhm.
Although in English, I would probably always go with assumptions, but that's just my experience working with German speaking companies.
That's true. Yeah, it's not that I dislike the word risk. I dislike the obsession
Yeah.
for risk.
Okay,
Like
that makes sense. Yeah.
like a because what I say is, if your only wish is to avoid risks at all costs, then the result is no innovation. You have no chance to innovate. You want to avoid risk all the time. I know that testing assumptions, you end up avoiding risks, but the mindset is about dropping bad ideas. You focus on the good ones. So I try focus more on the opportunities. But one thing that is quite interesting about this, people can get confused with assumptions. And yesterday I had a discovery done right cohort, and we were talking about it. And I was observing how people would formulate during the exercise we had there. And to formulate an assumption, it needs to be something that is testable, something that you understand, it's clear. For example, let's imagine you have an e-commerce and then people drop on the checkout. And the reason they drop is because they have found, you imagine, they have seen there's some hidden cost. The moment they go to the checkout, appears a different price there, and then they drop. Maybe there is some taxes or something like a delivery cost they didn't know beforehand, and there they got to know that. So what is the assumption behind it? The assumption is customers will drop once there's a price change in the checkout. And then you try testing that and see if this proves to be right, then yeah, that's the assumption. So you want to see that. So imagine in the role, the act, and the consequence, and that's what you want to test. And this is the tricky aspect, because you can say, for example, customers dislike price change. So what do you do with this assumption?
In this scenario that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole lot of different things
Yeah,
that you can test there, right?
exactly. So you need to be precise, because if you say customers dislike price change, it's nothing. Or for example, customers want a better price description or something like. The word better is tricky. What are you trying to solve? So you need to be as precise as possible. That's the point of assumptions. But there are also other points here you could approach. Let's say for you, it's not an option to talk about assumptions. Maybe you have a lot of pressure from the stakeholders to deliver, and then you have no chance of talking about assumptions. I've been in scenarios like that. Delivery is all that matters. Then you go to measure the outcomes. Then you start asking a question. Before you start any feature, say, all right, I'm going to work on that. But I'm a person who wants to achieve result. Just help me understand one thing. Once we put this live, what does success look like? What is success? Then you name that, then you put it live, then you see if this success becomes true. And then you can have a conversation. Say, well, you told me that success looks like this, and what I'm looking here, it is not what is happening. Maybe we could work differently to avoid this scenario. Maybe we could focus on the success and find a different approach of getting there. But this diagram here, it is about understanding your scenario, seeing what is missing, and how you can focus on one aspect at a time to make it better. Because product management is not a sprint, it is a journey. And to get to the state of the art takes a while. And the analogy I like making is something like this. You may be quite experienced and you may have read a lot and you understand all the elements. And then you go to the top of the mountain and you start saying how beautiful the sunset is from there, how nice the air is. But people are on the bottom of the mountain and they don't feel that. They don't see the sunset. They don't see anything you're seeing because they are in a different scenario. You can shout from the top of the mountain, say, "Come here, here's nice, here's the best place to be." They won't get there because they don't know how to get there. And then you need to be humble enough to go down the mountain and meet them one step ahead and say, "Hey, let me give you a hand. Let's start getting there." So it is a journey, and then you help the others. Small victories will enable you to get further.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I can definitely relate to what you said about that you basically start measuring in the beginning to actually see how success looks like. And I've also done this countless times with teams when we embark on this journey to get a little more data driven, to ask a little more why we are doing it, what we actually want to achieve. And what I really felt was also when like in contact with stakeholders is that that it is surprising how well it is. I mean, not always, but like with like a lot of people is actually perceived in a like very welcoming way, saying like, oh, that's, yeah, I mean, what we actually want to achieve with that is that, right? And once you get that information, it also it's also easier to work with engineers, with UX designers to actually achieve that goal, right? Because if you just get like a story into your backlog where it says do this, then it is not really leveraging any thinking within the team itself, right? And yeah, that always saddens me a bit, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a challenge.
Anyways, so I think we have another 12, 15, 13 minutes left. So what I really would love to do also is open up the discussions and check with the audience. So do you have any questions for David? I think now is the right time to ask it. I think in the meantime, I actually have a question. So, I mean, looking at the results we saw today, are these like typical when you do this like regularly with companies? Is there like, I would say, like a typical score that organizations get? So
Yeah, I can share one I did in a live presentation, and then that can speak for itself. So, and this was a live session with 112 people. So let's show it here. So the first one, as you can see here, with 112 people, the results were pretty similar to what we
yeah.
got. Just the roadmap, we had more. But when we go to the status quo, I want to present only. No, not present. So let me open here. So here we go. You see? 96 results were similar. Because the truth is, it is hard to do product management, let's say by the book, because organizations are not used to that. So it takes a while. And it is not a journey everyone is willing to take to foster this change because it is exhausting to help people and move on and so on. But this is where I get energy actually when I see the change.
So apart from, I mean, we already talked about where you would start in that journey. Is there, let's say, a tip you have for people who are willing on embark on this journey and actually help their team and their organization become like, I don't want to say like more data driven. I mean, this is part of it, but to actually improve their product management practices?
Yes, ask 10 times more questions than you give answers. That's the way to start.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I think like I don't know who said it, but like a couple of months ago, someone said because I asked him how would you identify, or what would you say a good product manager does, right? And the answer was good product managers always ask the right questions, and I think that is actually very true. And I really feel that you got to be like super curious to work in product. And I know that sometimes organizations make it very hard to stay curious, right?
Yeah, I think the trick aspect is to help the others reflect. You need to get the others to step back from the reality, and there are some questions that will lead to that. For example, I like asking questions that lead to a no answer because a no answer gets people to think. If you look at a feature and you say, this feature seems not so good, do you still want us to implement that? It is most probably a yes question. Then the person will say, yes, I want. But if you say, based on everything I have seen from our customer interviews or whatever, I see that this feature is going to be useless. Do you want us to create something useless in our product? Then no one wants that. Big chance the person will say no. What makes you say that? Then it goes to a conversation. Then you have the chance of talking. So I like asking questions. I think a lot about the question and then lead to a no, because then open up. And the reason is simple, because we want to avoid failures 10 times more than we want to succeed. So once you play with this card, people tend to listen.
I think that is some solid piece of advice. So if we do not have any other questions for David, is there anything else you would love to leave us with tonight?
I mean, as an advice or some takeaway?
Some takeaway, maybe some piece of advice or anything that is important to you?
I've been thinking about it. What is the challenge of product management? And it's very easy for us to get bugged with techniques, get bugged with methods, and all of this. But in the end of the day, the most important is to strengthen collaboration. So get together with business stakeholders, understand what matters for them, why that matters, and then get closer. Because sometimes I perceive teams with two endings of dealing with stakeholders, two extremes, I would say. One is stakeholders are the customers, whatever they say, we do it. This leads to a service provider relationship, and that's not good for anyone. And the other extreme is they are our enemies. We need to fight against them. This is also bad. But then you have the other. I know I don't know everything, and I won't know that as a product professional. And I need supporters, and I need the ones to enable us. So stakeholders become partners, and then you establish relationships with them that enable to create great products. Everyone on the same boat, marching towards the same region. So that's what I encourage you to focus on relationship and collaboration, because once this gets better, then for sure, then you have higher chances of success.
It's super interesting actually that you say that everybody in the same boat, because we're actually hosting another session, I think in a month or so, with the CXO of Vielmann, and we had a conversation about it yesterday. And he said like one of the key things that he learned about like stakeholder management is if you don't get people into the same boat, like the teams as well as the stakeholders, you are not really moving anywhere. And I think that it just, I'm always like always surprised again how similar the experiences are that we make if we are in the same position. And I think that's also why your content on LinkedIn resonates to so many people, because you are just talking about how you perceive the world and how you perceive the reality of many teams. And I think a lot of people can actually relate to that, because yeah, this is product.
Yeah, that's
It is.
that's product. Yeah.
David, thank you so much for joining us today. Like personally, I found it like super insightful, and I actually it got me thinking a couple of times how I actually see the different points as well, like the let's say anti-patterns that we talked about today, as well as where do you start fixing it, right? And yeah, I really loved the discussion. And yeah, if you have any further questions after event, or if you are rewatching this, definitely reach out to either David or myself on LinkedIn if you have any more questions. So with that, I think thank you also to everybody who has been watching. And David, thanks again.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.